Hi everyone, and welcome to the Stitch Sessions. Welcome to part 2 of our little darling cardigan project. Enjoy! Okay guys, so I have now completed 60 rows and I have achieved my back to waist ratio. So I have about 7.5 inches, which is about 19 centimeters, okay? So I am ready to do my bottom trim now. So you can see now the armholes are nice and prominent. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna do a couple of really simple single crochet rows to give us our little finishing trim on the bottom before we move on to creating our sleeves, okay? So for this part, I'm actually going to set aside my 4.5 millimeter hook, and I'm gonna bring in a smaller hook. This one is a 3.75 millimeter hook, which is also known as an F or a size 5, if that's the label you go by. And because of the nature of this crunched single crochet stitch, I wanted this little few rows to cinch in slightly at the bottom just to kind of give it a little bit of a tapering in effect. So I'm using this. You can go down to a 4. We were using a 4.5. I have kind of experimented with a 4 and it was pretty decent, but I wanted it to just cinch in a little bit more. So this is why you're gonna see a hook change momentarily. So let's take you through this finishing row here. Okay, and so, oh, by the way, if I hadn't mentioned already, I have 104 stitches across, okay? So stayed pretty consistent from what I had when we created the armholes there. Okay, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna chain 1, okay? And then you're just gonna go right back into that same stitch. And if it was a slip stitch there, it might be a little tighter. And you're just gonna insert a single crochet, and we're working into the full stitches now. So single crochet there. And then the next one's a little easier because it is a single crochet. And then a single crochet there. And that's pretty much it. You're just putting a single crochet into each and every single stitch. See, that one's a little tighter. That was a slip stitch. And so we're not working into front loops anymore, back loops. We're not using slip stitches for this row. It's just all single crochet stitches all the way across. And I will still have 104 stitches. Okay, so I just finished that final round. So this is row 61, it would be. And you can see it's very subtle, but now we've got just a little bit of a more defined edge because we're no longer doing the crunch stitch, just like that. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna snip my yarn here. Okay. Okay, just like this. Just gonna tie that off. And now I'm going to bring in my white yarn. And I just need a little bit here. I'm gonna use this as a little detail, a little accent here. And so I'm gonna place a slip knot on my hook, still using the same hook. And now where I left off, I'm just going to turn my work here. See, so we finished off here, turn my work. I'm gonna insert my hook here. And I'm just gonna slip stitch to join, and I'm just gonna repeat what I did in the previous row. So all I'm doing here is just giving it a little accent with some color. So I'm gonna chain 1, and then I'm gonna go back. I'm actually gonna try and work over these tails. I'm gonna go back into that same stitch and single crochet. And because this is a smaller hook, it's just giving it just more of a nice structure. And so just 1 single crochet into every single stitch. So I'm just gonna do a couple here just so you can kind of see the effect. And it's always just lovely. The simplest little details sometimes can just elevate a piece of work. Okay, see, just like that. Okay, so this is what you're gonna do for row number 62. At the end, you just snip your yarn and fasten off, and then bring back your green yarn for one more row for row number 63, and work the green all the way back. And then that will finish off our final trim, okay? So I'm not gonna go over, not gonna do that on video. It's the exact same thing. So just finish row number 2, snip your yarn, change your color, and do row number 63 coming back. And then we will be ready to start our sleeves. Okay, so I finished my bottom trim here, and you can see it just creates this really pretty little detail. I just love how that came out. So just one row of regular single crochets in green, one of white, and then finishing off with green. Just snipped off my yarn and wove in a lot of my ends there. So just love how cushy it is. Now just keep in mind, again, it is a lightweight number 3 yarn, and I'm looking at the sizing and I'm thinking this seems kind of small for a 1-year-old or a 12-month-old, but I am going by the size chart. And don't forget, and I've mentioned this before, that yarn weights, not all yarn weights are created equal, even though they both say a lightweight number 3 or a medium number 4. So if you're using a medium number 4, you're following the exact stitch count that I am, your cardigan will come out larger. So that might work out great if you're actually making this for a slightly older child. It's kind of a little easy hack to do if you want to create a slightly larger size. You can always go up a yarn weight and a hook size, and that will adjust the sizes slightly. You can see that I've also added my first sleeve. So I went ahead and did that. I just wanted to kind of see how it was going to come out. So I added the sleeve. So we started in the opening, and I just worked my way until I got to the cuff, and I did the same trim. This one, however, I did 2 rows of green in the single crochets, still did 1 row of white, and then I followed it up with 2 rows of the green for that little sweet little detail. So there are just a couple of slight decreases here, and because there's a lot of slip stitches in here, it can get a little funky, so you just want to pack your patience a little bit. But I'm going to go through it. I'm just going to get you started on how to begin working on your sleeve. It's nice and straightforward. Just going to work in the round and then add those decreases as you go along. So that way it just creates a slightly tapered look. Now I can see a little imperfection here because I think my seam started to move a little bit. But you know what? It's handmade, and that's what handmade art looks like. So let's get started. I'm going to get you started on the sleeve, and then after that, I'm actually just going to leave a little graphic up here on the screen of the exact number of rows I did and the number of stitches I had in each row, so you'll know exactly where to place the decrease. And I'm going to show you how to do a decrease as well, and that way you can just press the pause button and you can reference this as well. And that will take you, so I did a total of 50 rows for the sleeve. And generally I increased every 6th row, except near the end when I just wanted to keep the taper a little bit consistent. So let's go ahead and get started working on the sleeve, and then I will let you loose for quite a while. It took me, like I went continuously at it for, a whole evening off and on. So again, the slip stitches I know can get a little funky to work into, but it is all worth it when you feel how beautiful and squishy this cardigan is. So let's get started on our sleeve. Okay, so for my sleeve opening, by the way, I've got a very light fan going because it's so darn hot. So please excuse the noise if you can hear it. So first thing we want to do is establish how many stitches you have in your armhole opening. So for me, I have 46. Now, as always, working on garments, sometimes you might lose a stitch here and there. If you have 45 or 44, it's not the end of the world. What you want to make sure that you do is whatever the stitch count is in the first sleeve, you want to make sure it's equal to the second one. So let's say maybe you know, your first sleeve had 46 and you're counting these stitches and you have 47. There's a way we can do a little decrease to get you down to the 46. Or if you had like 44 on this side and that side was 46, there's a little way we can just add a few extra stitches on the seam here. So we are going to be turning our work for this particular sleeve, even though we're working in the round, because turning our work is what gives us this beautiful kind of cushy texture from that crunched single crochet. So I always advise when you're adding a sleeve on this way, usually it's in these raglan style cardigans, to start under the arm. It's a great way to kind of hide any joins. Okay, so we're going to grab our yarn here. And we're just going to place a slip knot on our hook here. And so I'm going to, and when I start working on sleeves in the round like this, I always make sure that the side I decide is going to be the right side facing out is right side facing out. So we're going to work on the sleeve from the outside. So some patterns, especially if you're a sewer, a lot of times you're working inside out so that the seams stay on the inside, but with this type of cardigan we are working right side out. So I'm going to find that little join in the center here. So remember that little stitch where we kind of worked into the space there? So that is where I'm going to slip stitch to join my yarn. So I'm just going to insert anywhere just slightly below there. I like to catch at least a couple of loops for a little bit of extra sustenance, so I might just kind of dip down in there. Okay, and I'm going to slip stitch to join. And now what I want to do is I kind of want to see if I can pay attention to the stitches that have just been done. Because remember, we always want to alternate what was done previously. So first I'm going to chain one. And I'm just going to head right away over into the next stitch. And to me, that looks like that was a slip stitch in the previous row. So on top of any slip stitch, I'm always going to single crochet. So I'm just going to kind of turn it so I can find the top of the stitch there. And you will have to help it along because chances are this is where you started or fastened off. So I'm just going to insert my hook, single crochet. And now the next one, I'm going to slip stitch, and you know the pattern now. Single crochet into the back loop of the next stitch. And then slip stitch into the full stitch of the next one. And that's basically it. That's what you're going to do all the way around. So this is a nice way to kind of like melt in. I like to use the word melt. It's kind of like you won't even be able to tell where you joined. So you're just going to continue doing that all the way around your opening. And once you come back to here, you just want to verify that you have the same number of stitches. So I'm going to finish mine, making sure that I have 46 stitches. And then I'll just meet you at the end of row 1 of our sleeve here, just to kind of get you going on row number 2. Okay, so I've just completed my 46th stitch, and you might notice that I actually had to dip down a little bit to get that single crochet in there because that one slip stitch was super tight, and it happens. So that's why I like to show you guys sometimes when I have to make do with circumstances, because that is the thing with handmade art, right? Okay, so, and there's this little gap here. Remember that was kind of the initial underarm seam when we went there. So because I have 46 stitches, I am in a perfect position to just slip stitch to my first stitch. And for this one, especially the sleeve, I did consistently use a stitch marker because sometimes I'm starting with a slip stitch and it's easy for that stitch to get lost. So I always immediately stick that stitch marker in there. So I'm just going to take it out right now. And then I'm going to go right back into that stitch. Oops, actually it's right there. And I'm going to slip stitch to join. Okay, so we're always joining under the arm here. Now, this is the end of row 1. You have 46 stitches. You're going to continue just placing your stitches as usual up to row number 5 of your sleeve. So row 2, 3, 4, and 5 will continue to have 46 stitches. What you want to remember to do at the end of every round, sorry if I said rows, it's rounds, is you're going to chain one and you're always going to turn your work. Okay, so now I'm kind of technically working through the inside here. So that first stitch here is a single crochet from the previous round. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to slip stitch into it. So I'm always doing the opposite of what I see. The next one is a slip stitch, and into the back loop I'm going to single crochet. So you guys know the drill. And I always like to continuously remind you, make sure when you're doing those slip stitches, keep them relaxed, because later on when you go to work into them, they can be quite a pain in the butt. See how that one's a little bit more snug? A little bit of a pain to work into. Okay, so then you just work around, slip stitch to join, turn your work, and work back the other way. So this guarantees that your seam will always stay under the arm there. So go ahead and do that until you complete round number 5. Then I'm going to meet you for the beginning of round number 6, because that's the first time we're going to do a decrease, just to kind of show you the way I do the decrease here, and then I will put that graphic back up on the screen with all subsequent rounds for you to follow. Okay, so I've completed my first 5 rounds. So now you can see that the sleeve is actually starting to form itself. And so now we're going into round number 6, which was one of our first decrease rounds. And I just wanted to kind of take you guys that are a little newer through this, just to give you a little guidance of how I do it using this stitch. So I've just slip stitched to join. I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work as I normally do. And so we are going to decrease 2 stitches out of this row. So that means we're going to decrease 1 stitch at the beginning of the round. We go all the way around, and then we'll decrease 2 stitches at the end. That just means that we're going to stitch 2 stitches into 1. And so we decrease 1 on this side, 1 on that side, so you'll decrease the round by 2. So where we had 46 stitches so far, we're going to decrease now down to 46 stitches for round number 6. So what we're going to do is we can see that our very next stitch is that single crochet. So normally we would do a slip stitch into there. So and then the following one is going to be a single crochet. So what I'm going to do is to decrease these 2 stitches together, I am going to insert there as if I'm going to slip stitch. I'm going to pull up the loop, but I'm not going to resolve it. I'm then going to go into the very next stitch right there, which is where I will single crochet. So I'm still going to kind of go in through that back loop there. I'm going to have to help it along. Okay, and I'm going to pull up a loop as if I'm going to single crochet. So I've got 3 loops on my hook right now. Now I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3. So what I've done is I've turned that slip stitch and single crochet into 1 stitch. Got a few little tails going there. So that is now my first stitch, and I'm going to grab my stitch marker and just place it right there, so that'll remind me where that first stitch is. And now I'm just going to continue on as I normally do. So the next stitch is going to be a slip stitch, and I continue on as usual and go all the way to the end. And when I've got 2 stitches left, actually I'm going to meet up with you when you have 2 stitches left. I'm going to show you the same thing we're going to do at the end. So this is round number 6 that we're moving on to. So I'll see you here in a little bit. Okay, I'm just at the end now of round number 6, and I've got 2 stitches left here. And so I'm sitting at 43 stitches, and I've got 2 stitches left. So we're going to make these 2 stitches into 1, which is going to give us our 44. So I just finished doing a single crochet. So my next stitch will be a slip stitch. So you just pull up a loop, but don't resolve. And then the next one is a double crochet. So again, that's why we want to be careful not to make our slip stitches so tight. There we go. Pull up a loop. 3 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through 2. That is now our 44th stitch. And now you would just slip stitch into the very first stitch there to join, and round number 6 is complete. And I'm just going to take the stitch marker out. Okay. And that was our first little decrease. So we did 5 rounds with 46 stitches. And then in round 6, we started to decrease. So we don't do it in every round, of course, just because we want it to be a little bit more of a gradual taper. Okay, so you can see it's just gradually coming in. So this is where I'm going to bring up that graphic back up on the screen, because the rest is pretty straightforward to create the rest of your sleeve. Now, just before I do that, remember, because some people will say, well, how do I know how long to make the sleeve? So generally, for a 12-month-old on that chart, from the inside to the wrist is about 7.5 inches. Now, I actually stopped about 7 inches just because I was feeling like it just seems like it's getting a bit too long. But the great thing about that is if it's longer, you'd rather have it longer than shorter. You can always roll the cuff. So that's what I would say for the sleeve length in general. Like if you don't have access to the chart, or if you can't remember what your measurements are, here's a quick little trick that you can do. As you've created the length, just set your cardigan down nice and flat and make sure that it's sitting even to where the raglan seam is. Then take that sleeve and fold it along that seam. And you can try this with any cardigan you own, and you will notice that the sleeve, and I mean just like a regular cardigan that sits either at your waist or just at your hips. So this obviously isn't going to work if you have a duster cardigan. But generally the sleeve will always, the cuff just drapes a little bit lower than the waistline. And that's generally how you know that you've got a decent length to your sleeve. So that's why for me, again, because I'm using a lightweight yarn, it's been kind of funny with the measurements. So that told me that that was plenty of length, okay? So now I'm gonna put that graphic back on the screen. So round number 6, we have decreased to 44 stitches, okay? You're gonna continue on with 44 stitches for round 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I'm just gonna make a list of the row numbers that will decrease and their stitch count. Once you hit round number 11, you are decreasing to 42 stitches. You will continue on that way for round 12, 13, 14, and 15. Round 16 is where you will decrease to 40 stitches, and then continue on for round 17, 18, 19, and 20. So you get the gist here. So your next decrease is in round number 21, where you will decrease to 38 stitches. You will continue on doing that until you hit round 26, where you will decrease to 36 stitches. You will then continue on for 36 with 36 stitches until you complete round 30. At round 31, you will decrease to 34 stitches. Then at round 36, you will decrease to 32 stitches, and this is where things start to change. In round 37, you will maintain your 32 stitches, but then round 38, I decreased again. So in round 38, I decreased to 30 stitches, and I maintained 30 stitches from round 38 all the way until round 45. And 30 stitches was my destination stitch count, because that was the wrist opening. So that's the other measurement you're going to need. So my wrist opening measured just a little over 5 inches. So if you divide that in half, that's 2.5 inches. And I'll put up the equivalent of the centimeters up on the screen there. So I want to maintain my 30 inches. Now, round 46 is where we create our cuff. And so all we do now for round 46 is you're just going to do single crochet stitches for every single stitch. So we're now no longer working on our crunch stitch. Round 46 is just one single crochet into each stitch all the way around. And I did that for round 46, 47, and 48. Okay, so there's actually 3 rounds here. So round 46 was just to kind of get it nice and even, and then 47 and 48, again, single crochet rows for the green. At round 49, I switched to the white color, and again did single crochets, 1 into each stitch, maintaining my stitch number. And then for round 50 and actually 51, so I have 51 rounds in total for my sleeve, I went back to the green and just finished off again 1 single crochet into each stitch, snipped my yarn and fastened off. And that will give you your full sleeve, okay? Once you've completed that, you will then go on to the other side, just like I did here, and you will repeat that process to create your second sleeve. So this part, I would say this one probably took me a little bit longer than the body, just because it's a smaller opening. And I just wanted to be really cognizant of every time I slip stitch to join and I turn my work, I really want to be cognizant of keeping that seam pretty much under the arm. I mean, if you look at it, you really can't tell there's a seam. I mean, if you really were to look closely, you can. But generally, it just kind of all merges nicely into each other. Okay, so you're going to press pause for a while now to create your sleeves, finish your sleeves, and then this might be a nice time to kind of sew in any loose ends that are kind of sticking about, like on the inside and things like that. Sometimes I'll use some of these loose ends on the inside. If I find that there's a little bit of a gap or anything like that under the arms, that's when I'll use that loose end to kind of weave that in. So do that, and then the final touch that we're going to return for is we're going to do a little bit of a collar, and then we're going to finish with the inner trim here down the inside of the cardigan. Really straightforward. We're going to maintain our little white band edging. So that's a lot, guys. You are off, and we will meet back here again to talk about our collar. Okay, so I've completed both of my sleeves. And so when I fold it down, you can see it just comes below the waist there. And I did that sweet little trim, and I made sure to add that little detail with just the single crochets and 1 row of white. And it's a little bit tighter in the stitching, as you can see. This is where I used that 3.75 millimeter hook. And that is actually the hook we're going to use to do our final collar and our center trim. So I'm just going to take you really quickly through that. It's really straightforward. It's exactly the same idea that you did on your cuffs and the edge here. So, okay, so I'm going to place a slip knot on my hook. So I brought back that 3.75 millimeter hook, like I said. And so this is still, my right side is facing out. So I'm going to find that very first stitch here, right here. And I'm just going to insert, and I'm going to slip stitch to join my yarn. Just nice and easy like that. And try to work over that tail as well. And all we're going to do is just a row of single crochets all the way around. In fact, we're going to do 2 rows of these using the green. And I just wanted to guide you really gently over this the little corner space there, okay? So you're going to chain 1. And then you're going to go back into that very first stitch and single crochet. So that chain 1 was just to kind of give us a little bit of height. Just like that. And you're just going to continue placing single crochets into each and every single stitch. Now, I just wanted to kind of start you off because as you come around the bend here, sometimes people get a little bit nervous when they are crocheting around the corners, I like to call them, of your yoke. And some people, sometimes they'll do some decreases. What we're going to do is we're just going to keep it really simple for this project. And see, I'm just coming up to around the bend here. So I'm just going to continue on. And I'm just going to place a single crochet into each stitch. And I'm just going to follow those stitches around that little bend. So with subsequent rows, that eventually will just be nice and rounded out. It won't seem so much like a corner, so to speak. And you are good to go. See, so there's the other side of that corner. And I'm going to do one more here just so you can see the actual effect. So technically this is actually the foundation chain that we use to create our yoke. That's what we're working into right now. So let me just pull that out. So you see, you're going to do one single crochet into each stitch, and then you just follow the bend, and it just follows it nice and smoothly. No decreases required. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to go all the way around the collar to the end here. You'll chain one, turn your work, and come back. So we want 2 rows of the green, okay? Then you're going to introduce your white yarn, and you're going to do 1 row of single crochets in the white yarn. So basically, if you've already gone through this with your cuffs, it's the similar idea. So you're going to have those rows of green, 1 row of white, and then you're going to come back in and do an additional 2 rows of green for your collar, and you will have finished. So we are not going to work down the edges yet. I'm working this style a little bit differently. Sometimes we do the collar and continue down and come back up. With this one, we're going to do the inner edges completely separate. So go ahead and do your collar, and then we'll talk about the inside edges. Okay, so I've finished my collar. Isn't that detail just so sweet? So it just kind of comes up a little bit, snuggles around the neck. And now we are just ready to do the inner edges here. And you'll notice that I did not cut off my green yarn. So we are going to follow the same pattern that we did for the cuff and the collar, etc. So we're going to go down the raw edge here in green. We're going to do 2 rows of the green in single crochet stitches. So this first row will be maybe a little bit trickier, but you're going into the edges of rows. So basically you can see where the bumps are. You can just fit a single crochet in between and then on the bump, in between, on the bump. Okay, so let's get you started on just continuing with the green down the way. So I did this purposely because I wanted this final edge here to overlap the horizontal ones. So I want this vertical edge here. It's going to overlap your bottom trim as well as your collar. So we're still using that 3.5 millimeter hook. And after I've just done my last stitch here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to go back into that same stitch and single crochet. So that's just going to help me kind of come around the bend here. Just like that. And now I'm going to place a single crochet into the side of each of these stitches. So we've got bottom of our white there, single crochet. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so you do a few of these. I always like to do a few and then pull my work back and see if I like the way it's looking. Okay, so there we go. So it's coming up around the bend just like that. Beautiful corner, beautiful edge there. And then I'm just going to go down the side here. So now I'm coming up to the top of the first row, and I'm going to skip this little bump here because I want to really snuggle this in. So this is all you're going to do, single crochet, and then into the next spot where I can fit my hook, trying to pick up a couple of loops. Single crochet and single crochet. Okay, so just kind of sit back and see how I like it. I'm pretty happy with that. And I'm going to continue going all the way to the edge here. And I do the same thing. I go right over that green, white, and green. Then I'll chain 1 and come back the other way. Okay, so we're going to do a green, white, green. Then you're going to go to the other edge, and you'll snip off your yarn, obviously, and you will do the same thing. Now, when you come to the other side, see here, I start at the top because I was continuing from here. So the front of the green row is showing forward. So for this side, I will begin here. So the front side of that stitch will be forward and it will mirror what we did there. Okay, and that is the final touch to finishing off this really cute little darling cardigan. So I'm going to go ahead and do my inner edges here, and then I'll be back with the final reveal of our sweet cardigan. Okay, I am finished. My little darling cardigan. I just adore it. Now it needs some blocking because you can see it's just a little bit kind of rippling there, but it's nothing that a little wet blocking won't solve. So what I'll do is I'm just going to soak it a little bit in water and some Woolite or just a small amount of detergent, and it just kind of allows the fabric to kind of be relaxed and or manipulated the way you like. So once I'm just going to soak it a little bit, I'm going to give it a little bit of a squeeze, and then I'm going to lay it flat to dry, and while it's drying I will just give it a nice little stretch so that this sits nice and even. Look at that detail. I love how that white came out. So see how it just kind of overlaps there? Just gives it a little bit of, I don't know, more of a refined look. And the collar just came out so beautifully. Super, super happy just with the single crochet stitches. And I'm not putting any buttons on this one. A lot of times with babies, you know, you're putting stuff on, you're taking it off, and the last thing you want to do is really fiddle with buttons. As long as their little arms are covered, you are good to go. So I know this one took probably a little bit longer than our previous round yoke tutorial we did, but that's because the stitch itself needed just a little bit more attention to its detail. But I hope you like the results. I am very happy with the results. So if you look at the back, you've got this really just gorgeous texture, and it feels divine. The Trubu yarn is just beautiful. So if you have any further questions about this tutorial, please do make sure to leave them for me in the comment box down below. And as always, if you prefer to reach me directly, you can reach me at info@crochetcrafty.com, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. If this is your first time here and you've enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to press that subscribe button and come and hang out with me. I release a brand new tutorial every Wednesday morning. And if you like this type of project, please do give me a thumbs up. That helps to let me know I'm on the right track with the types of projects that you guys want to see more of. And there's a few more baby items on the way, and I've actually just finished this project just in time to gift it. The baby showers this weekend for the upcoming little one that's on their way. Now, don't forget, come and visit me on the website at crochetcrafty.com and sign up for my monthly newsletter, because I gift you a free written pattern every month. And if you're curious to check out a few more of our pattern inventory, come and check out my Etsy shop on Crochet Crafty Canada. And thanks as always for supporting the channel by subscribing, commenting, liking, and some of you have actually been gracious enough to press that thanks button and donate a few dollars here and there, and I so appreciate it. It helps me to buy new yarn, add better equipment to make these tutorials for you, and I'm just over the moon and delighted, and I'm so appreciative of my crochet friends here on YouTube. Don't forget, you can come and visit me on some of the socials. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Please do share some of your projects with me. If you've used any of my designs, I'm always really curious to see the colorways that people have chosen for their projects. So make sure to tag me at the Stitch Sessions. And there you have it. So I hope you guys have an amazing day. Happy crocheting, take good care of yourselves, and I will see you guys in next week's session. Bye-bye.